Hey family, welcome to the very first episode of The Back Matter. I'm Ronell Whitaker. I'm your host, your guide, your captain of this ship, and I'm so excited to be here talking to y'all today. I gotta tell y'all I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first time doing anything like this, but I'm ready to roll. So what is The Back Matter? The Back Matter is a show where I'm gonna talk about comics, general nerd stuff. I might have some creators on here, definitely gonna have some of my friends on here, and we're just gonna generally nerd out in front of y'all. The first episode, all right, I'm talking about like a book that's super exciting to me, really influential in my own life as a nerd. I'm hoping that y'all dig into it. As you saw in the opening title credits, that first book is Icon. That's right, Milestone Comics Icon. In case you didn't know, Icon was written by the late, great Dwayne McDuffie with pencils by M.D. Bright. And this book comes to us from Milestone Comics. Milestone Comics was a legendary publishing house, another arm of DC Comics. The whole aim of it was to make sure that we had more diverse creators, more diverse comics, and more diverse characters that kind of reflected the world we actually lived in, right? So Icon is the story of an alien named Arnis who crash lands on Earth, in America to be exact, in the year 1839. Now, his escape pod lands in the middle of a cotton field and it matches his DNA to the nearest life form. That nearest life form happens to be an enslaved black woman. This black woman raises Arnis, this black boy that she found as a baby, who takes on the name of Augustus Freeman. For decades, Arnis lived as Augustus Freeman and his quote-unquote sons as a black man in America, quietly doing small acts of charity despite his superhuman power. That was until the 90s, when he's living as Augustus Freeman IV. One night, his house is broken into by a bunch of local teens, and Freeman uses his powers to thwart them. This also happens to be a group that includes a young girl named Raquel, who witnesses Arnis' use of his powers and begins to dream about what it would be like if the world knew that a black man had these powers. So now that the Wikipedia entries out of the way, can we talk about this book? First of all, Icon came out in 1993. And this is a time in my life where I was kind of like done with comics, right? I mean, Superman had just died and that whole thing was truly overwrought. I mean, Superman was on SNL at some point, right? And I was really getting tired of just the collectible or the collectability of everything, right? Everybody was talking about, you know, the variants and foil covers and all this kind of craziness. And as a old 13, I was getting like super jaded with just comics culture in general. But around this time, Milestone came out and I thought like, this is something that I might want to dig into because it looks, appealing to me, right? What's the thing that appealed to me? I mean, honestly, it was a collective of black folks, man. I mean, they had Hardware, right? Who was this black Iron Man. Then they had, of course, Icon, who was, as I mentioned in the beginning, black Superman, right? But it wasn't just that. I mean, these were folks who were putting their own spin on these characters, and they were telling stories that I thought reflected, the life I was looking at. This was a chance for me to see a comics world created that I could own and feel a part of, right? Like, I was a 13-year-old kid, teenager, going into high school, and I was becoming more politically aware. I'm living in Chicago, and this is the world that we live in, right? This is 2 years after Rodney King, 1 year after the LA riots. Chicago was being crazy overrun by gangs, drugs, police brutality, equality, and all of those things were at the forefront of my mind. Now, Spider-Man and Superman weren't addressing any of these things. But here comes a publishing house that was actually going to address that. I mean, that was blowing my mind. Icon kind of gave me a way to frame some of what I was seeing in my real world through my favorite medium, which at that time, again, was comics. For the first time, I'd heard like stuff about, Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois, right? And, this is actually, I think about this every day. Every time I hear somebody bring up stuff like respectability politics and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, literally, there's a frame or a panel in Icon that pops in my head every single time, right? As the first time I was exposed to these ideas. And what was dope about Icon is that it pit those ideas against one another. You had even Rocket, who's Raquel, was reading Du Bois in the book. She quotes from The Talented 10th, and Icon, when he sees that, responds, "I'm more of a Booker T. Washington man myself." And it was cool how they presented this dichotomy between the two, right? You have this rebellious young girl, black girl, who, you know, inspired Icon to even want to come out and be a hero by challenging him and by pointing out the idea that it's easy to say that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you already learn how to fly, right? Like, that line lives in my heart and soul to this day. And the dope part about it too was, unlike your Supermans and stuff like that at the time, Icon actually made me reach beyond the books I was reading. I mean, this led me to read more from people like Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, and also led me to read stuff from Marcus Garvey and literature by Ralph Ellison and James Baldwin. The impact that this book had on me is endless. When you talk about the idea that we can explore politics and we can explore actual real life things through comics, this was the first time I'd ever really seen that. And I know there are folks out there who will say, like, what are you talking about? Captain America would beat up Nazis, and, you know, Wonder Woman would beat up Nazis, and Superman would beat up Nazis, right? But here's the deal, though. Eventually, by the time I was reading comics, I mean, these dudes were fighting Brainiac and Doc Ock and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't really getting a chance to see them get street level. And even when they got to stuff like Luke Cage and Daredevil, who were more street level, at that time, it was still very much the comic book hero stuff that we think about when we think about comic book hero stuff. This was a time when I was feeling like I'm getting to actually explore something that I was really interested in the medium that I'm interested in. The power of these comics is that they led me to think and explore beyond the comics. And for that, I had to feature Icon as the first thing that I ever talked about in this show. So that's it. The back matter is really just me talking about comics that I dig, digging into the context behind those books, and just really being passionate about the things that I love. Every book I'm going to feature on here, I'm also going to do something that's a little bit cool. I'm going to do a soundtrack to go with it. So if you want to, you can follow that Spotify playlist. Here for this one, it's called the Icon A Journey Home playlist. Hopefully y'all dig it. So that's it. That's the back matter, y'all. That's the whole point. I just talk about comics, put them in context of the time, maybe in my life or the time that we lived in, and try to go a little bit deeper beyond just the regular, reviews and all that kind of stuff. Might throw a little bit of criticism in there. My hope is to put 2 of these out a month. I might get to 2 a month. Who knows? I'm a teacher, y'all, so things get a little bit hectic. But end of the day, hopefully y'all will join me on this journey. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button. If you got something to add, go down in the comments. Discuss some things. Be nice, though. I don't need y'all to be haters down there. All right? So, hope to hear from y'all soon. Thanks for sticking around. See y'all again on the back matter.